So here we are. It's January 2025. And in the real estate industry, as we look out over the year ahead of us, the question is, where are the surprises? Are there going to be some more surprises in the capital markets? Are there going to be surprises in politics and geopolitics? Is there more friction for cross-border investing? Very good questions. And the reality is we don't know the answers, but we can think about it, and we can think about and anticipate where those surprises might be. And not all surprises are bad either. There may be some opportunities here, some opportunities for us to undo some of the problems from the past as we look forward into the future.
You are listening to the AFIRE podcast, real estate, technology, cross-border investing, and the opportunities of a changing world. Let's start a conversation now.
So I'm speaking with Byron Carlock. He's an accomplished CEO, visionary strategic planner, and team builder with expertise in real estate, private equity, and family offices. He's an amazing thinker, thought leader, and a proud member of AFIRE that helps prompt us to think further, think deeper, and into the future. So, of course, I have to talk to the great Byron Carlock as we think about 2025 and what's going to surprise us. Let's start with just an easy question, which is, all right, Byron, you can make one bet in 2025. What is that investment that you're going to make this year?
Well, on the financial side, it's going to be all indices that have given up on real estate because we're about to see, I think, a nice return forward. Office is slow to recover, but everything else is actually doing pretty darn well. And the indices are not yet reflecting that in the public markets and in the fund markets.
So great opportunity to think about, okay, we're undervalued at this point, but what do you think some of the risks in 2025 that we need to keep an eye on? I mean, we can't be completely sanguine and go into real estate going, oh, this is a no-brainer. We're going to do great. What is it we need to worry about?
By no means. The banks are still the laggards. The banks have not opened up the lending side of the business for new opportunity. We are development short in most every product category other than office. We are really in the middle of reimagining what we want our cities to look like for this next cycle as we look at development and redevelopment and the eyes towards sustainability and the interaction with energy and energy supply. The biggest opportunity is housing, and the housing shortage is acute in all of our top 30 cities. But also we see the burgeoning growth of what Greg Lindsay calls micropolises, small growth areas that have sprung up COVID and post-COVID that are worth looking at and will become more institutionally acceptable as investment venues. And so I think all of that points to changing ways that we are using real estate to accommodate our lifestyles.
How do you think we might be surprised to the upside in 2025 in some of these areas? Certainly housing and a 7 million unit deficit in the US looks insurmountable. How do you think we might break through a little bit in 2025 in terms of creating more housing supply?
Well, we're already seeing it in changes of policy in some cities with extra dwelling units being allowed on property, the growth of the tiny house world and the modular housing world, SIPS panel construction that's allowing for houses to be constructed inside 2 weeks around a poured foundation, Icon debuting their multi-story 3D printed house. The new technology is catching up quickly to show new demand solutions. They're not yet mainstream, but I think that's something to watch, and I think there will be some breakthroughs.
There's nothing like crisis to prompt innovation, it seems to me, and we may very well be in that time period where a lot of new ideas become more mainstream when it comes to fixing what is a real crisis, and not just in the US, but across the world. Would you agree?
Yes, I do, but I think our challenge is to make it beautiful, walkable, livable, enjoyable, and sustainable at the same time.
That stuff matters. It's not just we want to have it. We pretty much need to have it in order to have successful communities, it seems to me.
If you think about tearing down a single structure on a lot and putting up 10 tiny houses and creating a nice walkable community with access to amenities and infrastructure, that becomes a neighborhood changer.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, many of our legislators have not caught up to those zoning and variant requirements that would have to be changed in order to allow that. We've seen it work in cities like Detroit, where the 2-for-1, 3-for-1, 4-for-1 variances have been allowed for single structures to come down and new duplexes and quadplexes go up. I think that needs to happen in many cities because it will change the fabric of the neighborhood and frankly take us back to some of the beautiful zoning we had in the 20s and 30s.
It seems to me that we've been living in an era in our lifetimes where conventional wisdom is density is bad. We need to avoid density. To maybe a more nuanced view, I'm surprised both sides of the political aisle, there seems to be more and more of an embracing of this idea at the federal and the local level that we need to rethink the narrative around density, what is best and what makes the most sense for people, not just from a standpoint of lifestyle, but from a standpoint of value, that you're creating more financial value in these denser environments if you're careful and nuanced about how you approach it.
Gunnar, that's well said. And I think the word should be community. What developments can we do that inspire community?
Mm.
What brings us out onto the sidewalk and onto our front porch and in communication with our neighbors? We live isolated worlds with our smartphones and our computers. And really, the beauty of life is by inspiring community activity that brings us together as humans. And that sounds a little corny in some regard.
Mhm.
But if you go back to some of the earliest writings about architecture in a favorite book of mine, Patterned Language, it's about creating villages and communities and town centers and farmers markets and things that bring us together. I think it's important that we take this next cycle to go backward in time and look at what does just that and brings the bricks and mortar in contact with the soul.
I like your vision. This is a very positive direction for us to go. As we're also facing some severe headwinds in real estate and probably in the economy from the standpoint that over the last 20 years, we've seen a regular compression of cap rates and obviously of reduced interest rates. And that was a great way to make money on your investments. But no matter what happens over the next year or two, there's very few people that believe we're going to see a rapid decline in interest rates. So capital is going to be tougher to get. And you will not be successful necessarily through financial engineering, through having a better capital stack than everyone else. So how should real estate investors be thinking about the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to how much financial engineering is enough to get to alpha?
I'm of the belief that real estate should be a long-term position in one's portfolio. So this may be the beginning of a cycle that is showing we don't focus on build and flip as we have for the last 20, 25 years, that we look at building sustainable real estate that has a long-term position in the portfolio, much the way the life insurance companies have looked at the asset class for years.
Mm-hmm.
So this may change the way that private equity plays in the capital stack. Maybe private equity, as you see, many of those funds are moving toward credit strategies.
Right.
Maybe they have the mezzanine loan that gets refinanced out over time, but the owner-developer partnership fund holds the assets longer and enjoys tax credits and incentives on the front end and amortizes the investment over a longer term and looks at longer-term returns as opposed to quick, high IRR build and flip or develop and flip or redevelop and flip returns. It may be a new era for this period of time because the former strategy works best when debt is cheap, and it's not going to be cheap this next cycle.
Well, given it's not going to be cheap, and again, part of your Back to the Future theme that seems to be emerging here is that we have new players seem to be taking the leadership role in terms of investing for the future, those that have longer time horizons and, in fact, multi-generational time horizons. Who do you think may be the major kind of the leaders of real estate investing over the next 10 years? Is it a new group is it beyond the pension plans? Is it beyond private equity? Who is going to be leading the charge, if you will, in terms of new investing in real estate?
That's a great question. If we take some discrete data points from this last year, it would be, I think, the high net worth family offices and private capital from around the world more than institutional capital that's trying to reposition their portfolios after this last downturn.
Excellent. So think about what is it that you hope is going to happen? Maybe it won't, but what is it that you hope will happen in 2025?
My hope is that this convergence of asset classes with lifestyle and reimagining our built environment gives us a chance to undo some of the sins of the past with bad architecture, bad planning, bad zoning, bad walkability, bad sustainability into a future where we have a built environment that we're actually proud of, that we enjoy. maybe back to some of the old European standards that make some of the great cities of the world so enjoyable to visit. As many of you know, I started my career with the Trammell Crow family, and Mr. Crow used to talk about so much of the architecture built from 55 to 75 really just needs to be torn down because it was really just bad architecture. Those were the brutalest, quick expansion years. This is our chance to tear down the bad and build the good, then build the new, build the long-lasting, build the sustainable, and build the beautiful.
Amen, brother. Well, thank you so much for, all these great ideas. And we're looking forward to talking in 2025 with you, Byron, as we learn what the future is becoming.
Thank you so much, Gunnar.
You've been listening to the AFIRE podcast. Remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast subscription service, such as Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitchers, and others. AFIRE is not engaged in providing tax, accounting, or legal advice. No content in this podcast is to be construed as a recommendation to buy or sell any asset. Some information included has been obtained from third-party sources considered to be reliable, though AFIRE is not responsible for guaranteeing the accuracy of third-party information. The opinions expressed are those of its respective contributors and sources, and do not necessarily reflect those of AFIRE.